Picture this. It's the summer of 1787, and the brand new American experiment is already on the verge of total collapse. But out of this really heated, desperate debate comes a single, brilliant deal that would literally define the nation, the Great Compromise. So what exactly was this deal, and how did it manage to save the United States from falling apart before it even really got started?
This was the fundamental question facing America's founders, right? How do you possibly unite 13 totally different states, each with its own interests, its own fears, its own demands, into one single functioning nation? At the time, honestly, finding a way forward seemed just about impossible.
So our story really kicks off in the hot, sticky summer of 1787 in Philadelphia. The United States was this new country, yeah? But its first shot at a government, the Articles of Confederation, well, it was a complete disaster. The central government was so weak it was basically powerless, and the nation was starting to crack at the seams. Yeah, the country was in serious, serious trouble. The government couldn't pay its war debts, it was too weak to even handle rebellions at home. So leaders like George Washington and James Madison called for a secret meeting. Their mission was huge: scrap the entire failing system and build something totally new, a government with actual power, but one that was carefully balanced so it wouldn't become tyrannical. They agreed on a basic structure pretty quickly. A government split into three branches. You've got the legislative branch, Congress, to write the laws, the executive, the president, to enforce those laws, and the judicial, the Supreme Court, to interpret them. This part, it was actually the easy part, but they were about to hit a massive, massive wall. And that wall was the question of representation. Simple question, right? How should each state be represented in the new Congress? Well, this wasn't some minor detail. It was a huge conflict that, and this is not an exaggeration, nearly tore the entire convention apart before it even got going. So the fight basically came down to two groups with completely different visions for the country. On one side, you had the big states with large populations like Virginia, and on the other, you had the smaller states like New Jersey and Delaware. And each side was absolutely terrified that the other would just completely dominate the new government. Okay, so two competing plans hit the floor. The big states, they pushed for what was called the Virginia Plan. Super straightforward. Representation is based on population. The more people your state has, the more power and votes you get. But the smaller states looked at that and were terrified of being totally ignored. So they fired back with the New Jersey Plan, equal representation for every single state. One state, one vote, period, no exceptions. So you have two opposing, non-negotiable demands. And what happens? The whole convention just grinds to a halt. Nobody would budge. For weeks, they were completely deadlocked, and the entire American experiment was just hanging by a thread. It really looked like the dream of a united nation was going to die right there in that Philadelphia State House. But then, a breakthrough. A delegate from Connecticut named Roger Sherman, along with his colleagues, he steps forward with this incredibly elegant solution. It was a deal, a compromise, that would give both sides something they desperately, desperately wanted. The idea was so simple, it was brilliant. Don't choose one plan over the other. Instead, what if you created a Congress with two different chambers or two houses? This one concept right here was the key that unlocked the entire stalemate. Okay, so here's how it worked. It's fantastic. The first chamber, the House of Representatives, would have representation based on population. Boom! The big states are happy. But the second chamber, the Senate, would give every single state equal power. 2 senators each, doesn't matter how big or small you are. And that made the small states happy. It was this perfect blend of both plans. Just genius. Now, this two-house system has a name. It's called a bicameral legislature. And here's the really crucial part. For any new law to pass, it had to be approved by both the House and the Senate. This basically forced the big and small states to work together, making sure that neither side could just steamroll the other. But with the House of Representatives now based on population, a new and much, much darker conflict came up. See, southern states had large populations of enslaved people, and this raised a truly terrible question. Should these human beings, who were treated as property and had zero rights, be counted just so slave states could get more political power? The answer they finally landed on was a chilling calculation: 3/5. This one fraction, it represents one of the most painful and morally bankrupt bargains in all of American history. a deal that would haunt the nation for generations to come. The Three-Fifths Compromise was a deeply cynical deal. The Southern states wanted to count every enslaved person to get more power in Congress, while at the same time denying them any humanity. Northern states argued that, okay, if they're going to be counted as property, then that property should be taxed. So the compromise was to count 3/5 of the enslaved population for both representation and taxation. It was a political fix that wrote slavery into the Constitution, empowering the slave states and just kicking the moral crisis of slavery down the road. So, these two deals, one a brilliant political solution, the other a deeply troubling moral bargain, they were the price of unity. They were the difficult agreements required to forge a new constitution and a new nation. And their legacy, both good and bad, continues to shape the government we all live under today. So the ultimate takeaway here is that the Great Compromise was absolutely essential. It broke that terrible deadlock between the large and small states, and it created the dual system of representation in Congress that has defined American government for over 200 years. It's the reason we have both a House of Representatives and a Senate. And, all this leaves us with a final thought. The founders, faced with a nation that was literally collapsing, chose compromise to build something new. Now, it wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it allowed them to move forward. And it really makes you wonder, in our own divided times, what role does compromise play in solving our biggest challenges? That's definitely something worth thinking about.